In the smoldering cradle of a fractured Earth, long after humanity's empires had crumbled into ash and steel skeletons, two titans emerged, born of entirely different purposes, yet now on an unavoidable collision course. Godzilla, the ancient behemoth of nuclear wrath, had become more than a symbol of nature's fury. He was its final executor, where once he rebalanced ecosystems and humbled man's arrogance, he now stood as the last will of a dying world, towering and scarred from millennia of war. His scales shimmered with the violent pulse of atomic energy. His roar no longer warned of disaster. It was disaster. But across the wastelands of silence, from a distant star, came another anomaly, unbound by any known force of logic or science. A bald man with a blank expression, a yellow jumpsuit, and a cape that fluttered as lazily as his own interest in the chaos around him. Saitama had transcended every measure of strength, not through divine heritage or cosmic accident, but through something unbearably mundane, sheer effort. His fists, unassuming in size, carried the weight of countless fallen gods and monsters. And yet, in all his power, he remained burdened by something more corrosive than any villain: boredom. Their clash wasn't summoned by politics, revenge, or ideology. It was something more primal, more existential. As Godzilla emerged from the Pacific once more, reshaping continents with every step, the world understood that no defense remained. Satellites captured only silence. Governments had long since disappeared. Only a few ragged enclaves of post-humanity watched the skies and waited for either deliverance or annihilation. Among those few, an old scientist, once affiliated with the Hero Association, watched with trembling hands. He alone believed in the legend of a man who had once saved the planet by ending threats before they began. He whispered the name, Saitama. And as if the cosmos itself had heard the call, he appeared, not with thunder or spectacle, but by walking into frame like someone looking for a lost convenience store. He stared upward at the looming silhouette of Godzilla, who was taller than the mountains themselves now, bristling with radioactive veins that glowed like rivers of molten sun. There were no pleasantries, no ultimatums, just a tension in the air, thick and ancient, like two universal forces realizing they had nothing left to oppose except each other. But beneath the surface of this impending fight brewed a deeper question. What does it mean to be powerful? Godzilla's strength was the result of nature's wounded rage, evolved, adapted, and fortified over epochs of struggle. Every scale, every roar, every nuclear pulse was a testament to pain repurposed as vengeance. He was not evil nor merciful. He was balance restored by brute consequence. His power was earned in the relentless cycle of extinction and rebirth. Saitama, on the other hand, had broken that cycle. He existed outside the equation. He had no limit because he had no struggle left. And that terrified even the idea of power itself. In every battle he found no equal. Every universe-threatening foe fell in a single, disinterested punch. Saitama wasn't just stronger than his enemies. He was the antithesis of conflict. In a world defined by challenge, he was proof that effort, once complete, left only emptiness. This existential void was the true heart of the clash. Godzilla, ever the embodiment of a world that demands balance through suffering, represented a philosophy that might and pain were the engines of progress. The Earth had shaped him as its guardian. Through endless turmoil, he fought because the world was never right. But Saitama, he was the antithesis, a man who had reached absolute strength and in doing so found no purpose. There was nothing left to protect, no adversary worth the thrill. And now, standing before the king of monsters, he felt something strange. Not fear, not excitement, but perhaps a question. Is this what I've been waiting for? he muttered, his eyes narrowing just slightly. As he floated above the ruins of what had once been Tokyo, his gaze met the burning eyes of Godzilla, whose atomic glow intensified. With each passing second, the air warped around them. Space itself seemed to bend in submission. Reality trembled as the physical world struggled to contain two definitions of supremacy. Saitama's fist clenched, but not from rage, from curiosity. For the first time, in what felt like an eternity, he wondered if the punch he was about to throw would be returned with something more than a whimper. Meanwhile, philosophers who had long since retreated into exile whispered from distant starships. They debated not merely who would win, but why victory mattered. Was strength meant to be a tool of change or a curse of stasis? Could a being with no struggle still be heroic? Could power without consequence still have meaning? They looked upon Saitama and saw nihilism disguised as comedy, a joke character who had, through sheer effort, become the grim reaper of narrative stakes. But they looked upon Godzilla and saw a creature that existed because of consequence, because the world demanded its suffering be represented in flesh. This then was the core of their clash. Not just a battle of strength, but a battle of philosophies. The monstrous gravitas of natural order versus the surreal absurdity of transcendent potential. The sky split as a thunderless pulse of nuclear radiation lit the clouds, and Saitama remained still. The winds carved mountains into valleys. Oceans retreated in fear. The Earth's crust groaned beneath the impossible pressure of two beings who did not belong to mortal equations. One, a force of nature refined by time; the other, an anomaly born of determination. Yet above them, beyond space, the cosmos watched silently, not as judges, but as witnesses, for this battle would not crown a king. It would define what it meant to be limitless. As Saitama's foot left the ruined rooftop and he ascended toward Godzilla's eye level, the final countdown to irreconcilable philosophies began. One punch, one breath, one instant in which the entire idea of power itself would be challenged. And only one of them would still be standing to answer the question: what is power if it has no equal? The earth quivered under the gravity of what was coming. Dust, long settled from extinct cities, rose once more like the breath of ghosts as the two entities faced each other. From horizon to horizon, nature recoiled. Oceans trembled into tidal convulsions. Lightning stitched across the skies without a storm to birth it, and silence itself became a casualty of their presence. There was no crowd to cheer, no gods to officiate. The arena was all of existence, and its prize wasn't land or glory, it was truth. Godzilla stood like the spine of the planet itself, his nuclear furnace flaring with renewed intensity. His dorsal plates lit up in sequence, a cascade of blue fire burning from tail to crown. Atomic energy seethed through his veins. He let out a roar so deep it fractured tectonic plates, and the sound circled the globe, echoing in the bones of things long dead. He had faced gods and titans. Cities had melted in his wake. He had withstood celestial weaponry and emerged ever more apocalyptic. The very atmosphere sizzled from his breath. In that moment, he was not merely a monster. He was a final judgment, given flesh. And yet before him floated a man who looked like a bored office worker with a gym addiction. Saitama didn't flinch. The atomic roar washed over him like a warm breeze. He hovered in the air, one fist lightly clenched, the other relaxed at his side. His expression held neither malice nor arrogance, only the faintest trace of hope. It was the look of a man, not expecting to win, but finally daring to believe he might not have to hold back. Godzilla moved first. The ground beneath him split apart as his colossal legs advanced with the force of a dying sun. Every footstep was an earthquake. His tail, whipped through mountains, vaporizing them. Then, with no warning, his chest swelled, and a beam of blinding atomic breath erupted from his maw, a lance of nuclear fire meant to erase anything in its path. It hit Saitama dead on. The impact shook the heavens. Entire continents fractured at the edges. Tsunamis swallowed islands that hadn't existed on any map. The beam lasted for nearly a minute, and when it ceased, there was only dust, molten earth, and a crater that could swallow nations. But Saitama still floated, untouched. Blinked, his cape fluttered. "Huh," he muttered. That actually tingled a little. And then he vanished. To the untrained eye, it would appear that Saitama had teleported. In truth, he had moved so fast that light itself stumbled to catch up. He appeared above Godzilla's head, then behind him, then in front again, each movement cracking reality like glass under pressure. He threw a casual punch, not serious, just testing. It struck Godzilla's chest. The shockwave vaporized clouds. From the stratosphere down to sea level, Godzilla reeled, not from injury, but from something alien to him. Momentum, not his own. He stumbled, footing fractured, as his mind processed that he had felt that blow. Not pain, not damage, but pressure, real pressure. He retaliated with a tail swipe. It shattered mountains 100 miles away. Saitama caught it with one hand, feet still dangling mid-air. He yawned. Godzilla's eyes narrowed, and a pulse burst from his core, his nuclear pulse, a radiative explosion of such magnitude it had once incinerated other titans instantly. It erupted outward in concentric, heat-drenched rings. Everything died in its wake. Everything, that is, except Saitama. This time, he didn't even bother dodging. He simply stared into the atomic storm, skin untouched, eyes unblinking. "Okay," Saitama said. "Let's stop playing around." He vanished again, this time with purpose. The next moment, his fist collided with Godzilla's abdomen. The blow didn't simply knock Godzilla back. It launched him. The king of monsters hurtled across the planet, carving a canyon across the ocean floor that split tectonic plates. He crashed into the Himalayas, disintegrating half the mountain range on impact. Godzilla rose slowly. His regenerative abilities, near limitless, repaired the damage in seconds. His atomic core flared again, brighter than ever. He opened his jaws, preparing a beam beyond even his usual force, a spiral nuclear breath, pure annihilation condensed into a beam of intent. Saitama was already there. This time, the punch wasn't testing. It was serious, and when it hit, the world paused. Time dilated, gravity bent, stars flickered. The punch struck Godzilla not just in flesh but in purpose. It was a blow that defied size, energy, or even physics. It was the essence of Saitama's existence distilled into motion, not rage, not hatred, but a single thought. You were strong. Thank you. Godzilla didn't explode. He didn't scream. He simply went still. The breath halted in his throat. His atomic core dimmed. For the first time in his eternal life, he knew what it was to be finished. His body fell backward, not as a titan, but as something finally allowed to rest. It collapsed with the sound of thunder dying. And still, Saitama floated, his fist lowered, his face neutral. Around the world, philosophers, those still alive, stared into the screens of failing satellites, and their debates ended in silence. The question had been answered. Godzilla had represented the chaos and struggle of nature's fury, power honed through centuries of pain and balance. But Saitama, by existing, by being, had answered a deeper call. His power was not the end, result of a world gone mad, but the logical absurdity of willpower reaching the absurd. His power mocked the very idea of escalation. Godzilla was the crescendo of a symphony of violence. Saitama was the silence after the final note, absolute, infinite and irreversible. He landed softly on the earth, now cracked and still. The winds had ceased, the skies cleared. In the distance where Godzilla's body lay, steam rose like incense from a finished ritual. Saitama looked up. "Still no challenge," he said, sighing. But that was closer. And then he walked away. Not toward a throne, not toward celebration, just onward. Because the burden of absolute power is not conquest or domination, it is emptiness. And in that void, Saitama remained undefeated, alone not because none could match his strength, but because none could understand the weight of carrying it. The battle was over. And Saitama had won, not just against Godzilla's might, but against the very idea that power must always rise in proportion to threat. He had transcended escalation. And in that final silence, the universe itself seemed to agree.